I've been so inspired recently with pictures like this and this that I decided I wanted to try it out and create a tutorial for you guys to be able to recreate lampshades like this for your weddings and events. Supplies include glue gun, glue sticks, ribbon, cutting scissors, pins, fabric, and a lampshade. So the technique that we're going to use for wrapping this lampshade is a draping technique. Now, is there a better way to do this, like custom cut out panels, things like that? Yes. Is that the way that I like to do things? No. The first step is to find the seam of the lampshade, and we're going to take the raw edge of our fabric and start pinning it along the seam of the lampshade. This is going to be our first point. After we have the seam pinned, we're going to start pulling the fabric around the lampshade, trying to keep most of the draping fabric at the top and very little at the bottom. We're going to pull it really taut at the top and start pinning at the top. Once you've gone all the way around and pinned all of the top and you're back at the seam, I just make a very rough, very generous cut at the seam so that I can get rid of the extra fabric. Now that we've gotten rid of the extra fabric, I take the pins out and I'm going to glue this first little edge near the seam. Make sure you pull really taut so the fabric lays flat. I cut the fabric at the top near the seam just enough, and then I only glue along that seam at the top so that I don't get glue and fabric everywhere inside the lampshade. To make things easier, you can work in sections. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the pins and making a small section from the seam so that I can pull everything taut and tight and make sure that everything is laying flat. As you do more of these, you won't have to do sections as much and you can do the lampshade, but I pin the section and then the bottom and start working at the top of the section first. Make sure that your glue gun is on low because you will get glue on your fingers and you don't want to burn yourself. Once I'm done with the top part of the section, I then move on down to the bottom part of the section. The rolling motion that I do with my fingers while I'm gluing down the fabric really helps tighten up the middle of the fabric. Here we're starting another section, and I really try to keep all that excess fabric at the top, but there will be some at the bottom as you go further along, and I just tuck that under as I work. About halfway through the lampshade, I decide to cut off the excess material. Just make sure you give yourself a generous amount to still work with. I like to cut slits where the metal pieces are, just so that the fabric lays down nicely. As I work in sections, I get the top part glued down, and then I move on to the bottom, making sure I'm pulling tight and taut as much as I can as I go. As you get to the end, you're going to have more of that excess fabric that you're going to have to pull really tightly as you make your last section at the start of the seam. I've pinned the fabric just a little bit past the seam because at the end we're going to make a pretty fold. This is where we start to make a fold at the end of this seam. I just feel like this really makes it look polished and well put together. I pin the fold down so that I can work in sections as I glue it. At the end, make sure that you're pulling extremely tight and to the left or to the right, whichever way you're working. I remove the pins and glue down in sections. Be careful of your fingers and try not to get the glue spilling out over the side. At the very end, this is where I go in and start cleaning up the inside. So just cutting off the excess material, gluing down anything that might need to get glued down. And then I also do this light layer of glue along the edge and use a spare piece of fabric to wipe it down and kind of pick up those frays, clean it all up. Any folds left in the fabric can be steamed out afterwards. And here's the finished product. Leave a comment if you have any questions at all, and until next time.